Good morning, everybody. My name is Jared Farrell and I am a Senior Client Advisor with Global Reviews. I'd like to thank you for coming along this morning where we are going to be talking about sports betting, and we are going to be doing a review of our research from 2014 into the sports betting industry in the UK. Again, thank you very much for coming along this morning. I realize that everybody's very busy now that we're moving back into the new year. Before I get started straight into the meat of the actual data itself, I'd like to very briefly talk a little bit about who we are in Global Reviews, because some people who are in attendance in this webinar this morning will not have come across us before. So essentially, in Global Reviews, we put 500 brands in the homes of 50,000 consumers annually, and they're not just any general type of consumer. They are what we call in-market consumers. So they are consumers who are qualified on the basis of planning to buy a product in your product area within the next 90 days. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later on as I get into more detail with regards to the methodology. But firstly, for the moment, to say that we believe, and our clients, through our clients we've demonstrated this, that our methodology is a real-world methodology where we bridge the gap between claim behavior and actual behavior. We launched in 2000, and so we are 15 years old this year, and over those 15 years we have developed unrivaled knowledge of best practice internationally with regards to digital customer experience measurement and auditing the digital experience the customers have on our clients' platforms. So this methodology that we have developed, it really is a methodology which works in a consumer's natural environment because it is a passive methodology, and we also incorporate claimed behavior as well through surveys, which we will be talking through some of the results later on. So on screen in front of you, you can also see then that we identified the issues that 95% of your customers will have or experience when they're trying to buy from you online, and we implement both a qualitative and a quantitative research methodology across all of the different types of products and programs that we operate. While I'm talking about sports betting specifically this morning, it is important to mention that we work across a number of different categories or industry verticals, and we benchmark best practice in each one of these individual categories, and we benchmark best practice between different categories. So for example, we take best practice from sports betting. We look at what the different providers within the sports betting industry are doing, specifically the UK is what we're talking about this morning. But we also benchmark best practice with regards to other industries like banking or insurance or energy, telecoms. And so what we're able to do is we're able to look at what does best practice look like in a different industry and how can different industries learn from each other. And so as I go through the different details with regards to the programs and the research that I'm going to be delivering this morning, the results that we're going to be talking about, we can also draw examples from other industries in other territories around the world. So that's who we are, that's what we do. Specifically for this piece of research or this year in review that I'm going to be talking about this morning, there are 13 different brands that we have included in 3 different phases of research that we conducted in 2014 into the sports betting industry in the UK. Now, we are working in Australia, New Zealand, in UK, in Ireland, all over Europe, and so we conduct many different types of pieces of research into sports betting, but I'm specifically talking about the UK, and the brands on screen in front of you, you'll see, are really the market leaders and represent most of the players within the sports betting industry in the UK. So the first thing to mention is that we are looking at a wide distribution with regards to the brands who are represented here, and we have data and analytics on each one of these different brands across the different research programs that we ran in 2014. Talking a little bit about the methodology, just to anchor what we're talking about this morning, we have an end-to-end proprietary funnel that we use when it comes to measuring the digital experience that customers have when it comes to working with brands. I'm going to be focusing really on the first 3 phases here this morning, the discover, the consider, and the act phase. They break down into 2 programs, which we call the Digital Marketing Effectiveness Program and the Sales Effectiveness Program. I'm going to be talking about the Digital Marketing Effectiveness Program first, and that essentially covers this discover phase where we're trying to establish how easily customers find you and how strong your attraction is to them. So let's get straight into the meat. As I mentioned, later on I'm going to talk a little bit about the methodology and where these numbers come from. I'm going to take some top-level figures that we have from 2014 from a digital marketing effectiveness program that we ran in June 2014. The timeliness of the data from the point of view of it being very close to the World Cup is important. The sample size is 200. That is 200 in-market consumers who are looking to open an account or place a bet in the next 90 days. And so we have cut out a lot of the noise that you might find in an omnibus sample of maybe 1,000 people. These are qualified people who are in market and actively searching for a provider in this particular category. So that's the numbers behind the data. So then some of the findings that we have, top level findings, 89% of those who completed the research in June 2014 began searching for a new provider or placing a bet on a search engine. And so while we may see that the number of people who use the search engine in total will be over 90%, maybe somewhere in and around the 92 to 93% figure. What I really want to highlight here is that 89% began their search on a search engine. And that is a very, very high figure. Now, we know that people use search engines for the purposes of research, but they also use them essentially as a URL, and they use a search engine to put in maybe a brand name to take them to a brand website. And so the proportion to which consumers are using it one way or another is actually very, very important. And so what we can see from this particular industry, 62% of those who participated in this research moved from the search engine straight to a brand website. And that is a very, very high figure. In other industries, you may find that consumers would move maybe to an aggregator, or maybe they would move to a research site. In this case, the strength of the brand and the brand website from a destination point of view is very, very important. That has a large implication when it comes to the actual journeys and pathways people are taking to your website, and the importance of your website with regards to the supporting information it needs to be giving as consumers are in a particular pathway and where they are on that pathway when they actually reach your website. What type of information are they looking for? 65% have initial preference before researching. I'm going to explain how we got to this figure later on because it's part of the methodology. But essentially the concept is here, before anybody went off and actually started looking for a provider, 65% of them claim to already have an initial preference. And the number one reason why they have this initial preference is with a company that they claim to have used before. So that's interesting. And then 68% claim to be current customers of a particular sports betting provider. And that is across 31 different providers, which is a very large number of providers. So there's certainly an element of fragmentation there, but also what the results have shown us is that the distribution with regards to the number of people who said that they had accounts within the total amount of accounts that, or total number of providers that were available to them to answer in the question was 186. So essentially 186%. So essentially what I'm trying to get to here is this concept that we discovered that many of the people in the research actually had more than one account or were a customer with more than one provider. Other key elements then, obviously 65% claiming to have no initial preference if we have, or 35% having no initial preference if we have 65% who claim to have a preference. So essentially that is the potential area of those who may be doing more research when it comes to a search engine than rather than moving from the search engine straight into the actual brand. And as I mentioned, 186% penetration with regards to brand usage. So again, this is from claimed behavior. One of the things that we measure in the digital marketing effectiveness program, and again we're at the top line figures before we go into the methodology, is this concept of shortlisting. Shortlisting is really the same concept of repertoire. As a consumer comes to make a decision about what brand they're actually going to work with or what brand they're going to give their custom to, they will typically have 2 to 3 different brands in mind. That is the repertoire. We call that shortlisting. While I'm going to go through the repertoire or the shortlist later on, One of the key questions we ask is, why did you shortlist this one provider over other providers? And that's the data that we have on screen in front of us. So at this stage, the customer is a little bit more informed, and they're making the decision with regards to the 3 that they will have in their list of potentials, and not yet at the place of choosing the one that they will choose over the others. What is it that's driving shortlisting? Probably no major surprises with regards to I'm familiar with their name coming in at the top. We also have they have good prices on offers. We have I trust this company, that I saw them on a search engine is important, and that they look easy to use. So some of the things that are coming out there are probably not majorly surprising. But when we group together the different results, we can start to see the different types of things which are driving the actual shortlisting. We can see 31% are claiming some element of a brand relationship is important to them when it comes to shortlisting. We have 29% are claiming that product attributes are important. And 28% are saying that it's the actual brand website itself which is driving shortlisting. So essentially the message is here that the brands really need to be looking at all of the different touch points and all of the different levers that are available to them when it comes to actually driving that consumer forward from a shortlisting point of view. And that's a very interesting finding within this market as well. Complacency is not really a possibility. So moving on, share of voice, which is an unprompted brand recall questions. So what we did is we asked people at the very beginning of the research, what brands can you think of when you think of sports betting? That question was something like that. And what we have on screen in front of us are those scores from the unprompted brand recall. Again, probably no major surprises here. Sample size is 200, so there is a margin of error at play. And then also we're dealing with in-market consumers, as we talked about before, who are looking to place a bet or open an account within the next 90 days. William Hill coming in at the top at 63%, followed by Ladbrokes and then PaddyPower. And as I mentioned, there are a number of different providers in this study, up to 31. I didn't want to include them all, so we stopped at 19% with regards to SkyBet. So this is the unprompted share of voice. Now, if I was trying to establish what the actual performance of the different brands in the market are with regards to how the marketing spend is working and converting into customers, one of the ways in which I might do it is I might take the share of voice, which is the top of mind, which might represent how my marketing investment is working. And then I compare that against, well, what's my actual penetration in the market? One of the questions that we ask in the digital marketing effectiveness is, who are you currently a customer with? And so what we have here is the penetration figures with regards to share of wallet on screen. And so the numbers are falling largely in line with where the actual share of voice is. So William Hill are coming in with the highest share of wallet, and they also have the highest share of unprompted brand awareness, followed by Ladbrokes and then PaddyPower. SkyBet down the bottom is bucking the trend a little bit, but the reasons for that really are that on the left-hand side, the share of voice is based on this whole entire sample of 200, whereas the share of wallet is based on only those who actually have an account. 32% of the sample claimed to not have an account at all, and so that's why this 22% will be a little bit higher when it comes to SkyBet. So, looking at the conversion figures then from share of voice through to share of wallet, how strong are these brands or how well are they performing with regards to pushing through their marketing and investment from share of voice through to actually converting them to be a customer? And so if we run conversion figures, we can see that William Hill and Ladbrokes are actually coming in and around the same and are performing in and around the same as each other. Now, if we use this as a metric, and what I'm going to show you later on with regards to some of the results that we have, we can see that this as a form of looking at performance is not giving us the full picture. And if we were to rely on this and we were Ladbrokes, we wouldn't be seeing the full extent with regards to how the market is moving forward, and we may indeed miss a trick. So, moving on then to the actual methodology behind the digital marketing effectiveness. So what we do is we take on each individual month 200 in-market consumers who are looking to place a bet or purchase a product in a particular category within 90 days. We recruit them through international panel providers. We work with a number of different international panel providers, and all of the recruitment is done in line with international best practice with ESOMAR guidelines. So this 2,400, which is made up over 12 months, with each month running at 200, is really a very robust and statistical number when it comes to margin of error and also being able to drill down into subsamples. For this particular study we ran in June, we have 200, which is representative of 1 month sample. From January of 2015, this month, we are going to be running 200 every month. So this longitudinal study and pulse is starting this month in the sports betting industry in the UK. We're already doing this in other industries in other territories around the world. So that's who we're talking to, 2,400 in-market consumers. We invite them into an online study and we ask them a number of questions where things like unprompted brand awareness and preference when it comes to buying a product in a particular category. What's really important here is that we get responses from these participants that are not in any way preempted by the research that they are about to complete. So the research is not skewed in any manner. So we ask them, for example, what brands can you think of when it comes to sports betting? And then we would ask them this initial preference question, which would only be based on those brands that they themselves can recall. We don't actually put a number of brands up in front of them at this stage because that essentially would affect the prompted brand awareness score. So that is where an initial preference score is coming from. We then bring them to what is called the blank screen test or the blank screen study. And it is essentially a blank screen. It's a screen on the computer. We've got a URL box at the top and there's nothing else. And we ask them to complete a specific task. In this task, we ask them to go and place a bet with a sports company. We then measure and track everything that they do, every keyword that they put in, every click that they click on, every link that they click on, and then how long they actually dwell on each individual page. We're capturing everything. And then we use this data with the claimed behavior to pull out lots of very interesting different types of results. I'm going to come back to that a little bit later on. We then bring them back into the research and we start to ask them a number of questions about how they got on with regards to the research that they have just completed, the process that they have just gone through as they were trying to find a new betting provider. We asked them to shortlist brands now on the basis of having completed the research. We're looking for a repertoire. We don't say how many should be in that shortlist, but we asked them to shortlist the ones that they would now consider at this point. It is a multi-select or a multiple choice question. From that multiple choice question, we then ask them to select one preferred brand. You can only choose one, and that is their final preference brand. The research methodology, there are two key things which makes it really stand out and unique. The first one is the premise behind the concept, if we're working backwards, is that when a consumer comes to make a purchase, they will typically only make one. And that is this single, final, preferred option that we are replicating in a market research environment. We then work backwards from that, where we try to replicate through a lifelike real-world methodology in their home the actual process of researching and going through the process of trying to actually choose one over another with all of the information that's available to you, and also how the brands have presented themselves to you based on their websites, based on their digital marketing strategy. So the actual journey through the methodology is really, really important with regards to being unique. Another thing which is hugely important is that the boxes that are currently green, the areas that are highlighted in green, are what we would call claimed behavior. People telling us about what they did do or what they would do. Limitations of asking tells us that people are poor predictors of their own behavior. And so to increase the accuracy of research, we bring in metrics like passive research, where we actually measure by looking over their shoulder, not actually looking over their shoulder, but in this case using innovative technology to record everything that they're doing on screen and merge it back into their claimed behavior, putting it together into one centralized data source, which really tells us what is actually going on. So it's a mixed 360-degree methodology is the second key point with regards to what makes this methodology very interesting. Okay, so that's the methodology. What do we do with the methodology? At a very, very top level, at the macro level, we look at the conversion ratios. The concept here is moving from recall, which is unprompted brand awareness, all the way through to this final preference, which is the choose one. So what we have from unprompted brand awareness, we have straight through to visited. Visited is did they visit your website? After that, we have the shortlisted, which is the repertoire, where you included as a brand shortlisted on their list of ones that they would choose from after the research, and then we have the final preferred. And so by looking at the conversion rates as they move from one to another and the incremental pieces of education and information that they're getting, we can look at the different steps on the journey and we can see how the consumer is actually changing, moving, giving their votes to somewhere else, changing their mind, and ultimately where they end up and the reasons why they end up there. So with the examples that are specifically on screen, we can see, for example, that William Hill is starting off with a really strong unprompted brand recall in comparison to, say, someone like Betfair. But yet, not that many people in the research actually visited the William Hill website, but yet their preferred score is higher than anybody else. So there's something very interesting going on there, and part of it would suggest that it's the brand that is actually driving it. But then over on the right-hand side, we can see that Betfair, who are starting off at a lower level of brand awareness, are scoring well with regards to driving people to actually visit their website. So there's something going on there with regards to Betfair being able to convert people from unprompted brand awareness as they hit the search engine actually into visiting their website. So are Betfair doing something with their digital marketing strategy online, which is then actually getting people to go to their specific website. And then we have Ladbrokes, and the interesting thing which is happening with Ladbrokes is that the huge proportion to which the shortlisted score is dropping down to the preferred. So if you recall previously, I showed you a slide where we looked at the unprompted brand awareness, we looked at the share of wallet, and we said, okay, if we looked at the conversion figures, it would look like William Hill and Ladbrokes are doing in and around the same. But if we look at it on this basis, we can actually see that William Hill and Ladbrokes are actually very far apart from each other. William Hill are doing very well, whereas Ladbrokes are really losing a huge amount of people as they move from shortlisted to preferred. Betfair are doing the best, albeit starting at a lower base with regards to unprompted brand recall, but their conversion ratio is better than the other people who I have listed on screen. So, as I mentioned, the blank screen study, we measure everything. In this particular case, we had a huge proportion of people who were starting at the search engine, 89%. We can measure keywords, we can see what they're putting on screen, and what we have in front of us are the actual keywords which were used by people in this study when they were asked to complete the task. What's really interesting from the results that we have in front of us, 7 out of the 10 top keywords which are used are brand keywords. And so people are searching on the basis of brand. And that has really significant implications when it comes to the advertising strategies and when it comes to triggering the brand name when people are trying to think of where they should go with regards to placing a bet. We also have organic and paid examples in here so we can see what really is driving from an organic and a paid point of view. And William Hill, the highest unprompted brand recall, scoring the highest with regards to the keyword search, followed by Ladbrokes. So it's following largely in line with regards to unprompted brand recall scores. But I'm particularly interested in PaddyPower and what's going on with PaddyPower, because what we saw in the brand funnels or the sale conversion funnels earlier on was that PaddyPower have a brand awareness, unprompted brand awareness score of 45%, which then translate into a final preference score of 17%. They are in between the Betfair and the Ladbrokes, or the Betfair and the William Hill. And what is it that's driving the PaddyPower visitors who eventually ends up on the PaddyPower website? And so what we have in front of us are these are the actual terms which brought someone to the PaddyPower website. So we can see that they're actually picking up a large proportion of the people who would be doing general search, and the actual brand search is a little bit lower. So PaddyPower are in the situation where they're bringing people both from the brand side and from the general search side, whereas Betfair are bringing more from the general search side, and Ladbrokes are bringing more then with regards to the actual brand side. But when we look at the actual multiple pathways which are taken by people as they move through the different steps. We can see whether they started on the search engine, they moved then to somewhere like Odds Checker and then on to actual PaddyPower. We can see that the journeys, maybe Ladbrokes, this is how Ladbrokes need to look at this to see why are they dropping so many people when it actually comes from the shortlisted to preference score. Is there a greater need for a greater understanding of their pathway in order to understand why are people not choosing them when it comes to the final stage and somebody else is actually making it onto their repertoire, onto their final preference. So speaking of final preference then, we mentioned already that before they begin the blank screen study, we establish what their first preference score is. And then at the very, very end, we have, after the repertoire, what is your final preference? And if we measure what happens between first preference and final preference, we can see how the votes are changing. And essentially, it's like an A/B test. As people become educated, how has that education changed their behavior with regards to making an ultimate decision, which I suppose is really what we're trying to replicate with regards to what happens in the real world as people are searching online. So Ladbrokes start off with the highest proportion of first preference, which is interesting, at 13%. Yet when it comes to final preference, they've only increased 15%. If we said the first preference could also be used as an indication of loyalty, then in this particular case, you'd probably be a little bit concerned for Ladbrokes because we're saying that maybe those who are actually converting are those who are most loyal. And for strategy moving forward into the future, there is a possibility then with the aggressive behavior maybe of competitors that the loyalty of their customers will be eroded. And what is Ladbrokes' acquisition strategy with regards to bringing new people on board? Certainly this becomes even more the case when you compare Ladbrokes' score to someone like William Hill, who have a first preference score of 11% and it increases to 26%, which is a huge jump. What is it that's driving the William Hill score? And why are people choosing them when it comes to first preference? When we look at the overall average with regards to the reasons why people chose the brand that they did for their final preference, we can see that I trust this company and that I have used them before are really important. That they had the best options and offers for my needs, and that their website was visually appealing is also very important. And the first time we see this website element popping up is here at 34%. So before that we have brand and product attribute. So that's interesting, but that's across the average. What is it that's specifically driving the William Hill? Now, a note of caution straight away. We are talking about those who finally chose William Hill as their final preference. So it is a subsample of the overall sample, and so we are looking at a lower base, and there is a low base warning on this particular slide. It's a sample of 200. As we move to this monthly 200 and an overall annual sample of 2,400, this won't be an issue because the numbers will be big enough. But looking for demonstrative reasons and trends with regards to why people who chose William Hill did choose William Hill against the average, we can look at how did they vote for final preference, what was driving their final preference in comparison to the average. So on screen we have an index difference between those who chose William Hill against the average, and what is very interesting is the greatest indexed difference between those who chose William Hill and those who chose average score. The website Help Me Compare Options is the one that achieves the greatest level of indexed difference. That I trust this company also comes in as really, really important. So the role of the website with regards to driving William Hill's success is really important, but also the supporting factor with regards to the role that the actual brand plays from trust on top of I have used them before is also very important. So that's an interesting slide just to look at with regards to what is actually driving the William Hill score. But if we move back to Ladbrokes and this conversation we were having about dropping from shortlisted to preference, we want to know, okay, how much are they actually dropping? And how much are they dropping in comparison to their competitors shortlisted to preference? Because ideally, we have spent all of this money on marketing. We have brought them, now that they are online, they are thinking of us because we have been advertising to them on TV and radio. We moved through the search engine and the digital marketing strategy, and we are now at their website. We have brought them to our website. We have achieved the shortlist. We are in the top 3, but we are losing out. So with regards to return on marketing investment and the job that needs to be done, we need to move the dial at the shortlisted stage to get over the line for the final preference. So it's very important for us to know what the lost opportunity was for those who shortlisted but didn't choose us at the final preference stage. And so this is the lost opportunity score for Ladbrokes, and we're looking at William Hill taking most of the people who shortlisted Ladbrokes but then went on to actually choose William Hill. And we can see that PaddyPower then are in second place for those who are then moving on to choose PaddyPower final preference while having chose Ladbrokes at the shortlisted stage. So by looking at this and Ladbrokes and looking at the different pathways and looking at the keyword searches, we can see then what's happening with regards to where people are moving, and we can also look at why they may be moving there. Because a key element of all of this is when we were looking at the PaddyPower keywords earlier on and we were looking at the reasons, the keywords that were used by people that ultimately brought them to the PaddyPower website, what's really powerful in that is that we can do that for any individual brand. So Ladbrokes could now look at William Hill and the people who went to the William Hill website and what were the actual keywords that brought them there. We can look at the keywords that brought people to competitors' websites is essentially what I'm trying to say, and that is not available anymore through Google Analytics because that was taken away about a year ago. However, moving on, I want to now just wrap up the first step of this actual research, which is the digital marketing effectiveness and the top line results that we got here. As I mentioned, we have a huge amount of data in here. Things that I haven't discussed that we have is device usage, length of time spent searching, all of this various stuff with regards to how they would actually like to go through the process, support and help from the digital marketing effectiveness point of view, but I don't have enough time, and so I really want to move on to the next stage. And so I'm going to wrap up the digital marketing effectiveness part of this particular part of the research, and I'm now going to talk about the conclusions before I move into the digital sales effectiveness. So the first conclusion is 86% begin their journey on a search engine and 62% move on to the brand website. William Hill are achieving strong conversion from recall through to final preference, and that the website allowed them to easily compare options, and also customers' trust in the brand and more probably a supporting element are key drivers to the final preference. Betfair are winning at the research stage, and we talked about the keywords, that the general keyword searches that people who are ending up on the Betfair website are using, and so they seem to be winning in the general keyword search rather than just the actual brand search. And then Betfair are in a strong position for those 35% I mentioned earlier on who started off the research process with no initial preference, because Betfair are achieving greatest penetration with regards to the general keyword search. So bearing in mind the third point here, that the website allowed them to easily compare options, it's a really important point when it comes to the actual digital sales effectiveness. So up to this point, what we have done is we have looked at everything before the customer actually reaches your website. Now what I would like to talk about is the digital sales effectiveness and the mobile sales effectiveness, which are two different studies that we ran in 2014, and we'll talk about who the best performers are, how the industry is doing, and the reasons why some performers are doing better than others. Starting off at the very, very macro level again, I will go through the methodology later on, but just looking at the industry averages, we did a digital sales effectiveness study where consumers using computers basically move through the journey of your website, and your website is rated on a number of different components. I'll go through that later on, but we ran one of these in February and we also ran one of these in June. Again, the June one is timely because it was in around the time of the World Cup. We can see across the board really that the industry itself is underperforming in many areas when it comes to the sales effectiveness. And so there is work that could be done here from the industry point of view with regards to meeting customers' expectations and needs when it comes to customer experience and essentially customers' digital experience on the brand's websites. So looking at the mobile sales effectiveness was essentially the same concept, but this time the consumers completed the study on the actual mobile websites of the different brands who are in this study. We can see then that the mobile sales effectiveness are really in many cases significantly below channel selection, obviously being the one that jumps out on screen when it comes to the performance of the industry. And this was conducted in July. So moving on to a little bit more about the methodology. We looked at this funnel process earlier on. I mentioned that we were going to be dealing with the first 3 areas, and so now I'm moving on to the 2 second areas after the discover phase into the consider and act phase. I'm looking at the sales effectiveness stage. As I mentioned, we are now at the doorstep of your website. What we are trying to measure now is how effectively do you engage customers and help them match a product or service to their needs, and how easy is it to purchase the product or service from you. What makes up the methodology for the digital sales effectiveness? Well, it's comprehensive, it's robust, and there's a huge amount in it. First of all, we start off with customer behavior. Users are recruited to perform a task on each website. So if you remember at the beginning of this, we had 13 different websites. So users were recruited. Between 20 to 50 in-market consumers are sent to each individual website. And those consumers, again, in-market, they're looking to open an account or make a bet, or in a general category, make a purchase in the next 90 days. They're recruited to perform tasks on the site so that we can establish success rates, efficiency paths as people move through the site. A second thing that we look at then is the customer attitude. We survey them pre and post actual interaction with your site. What we're measuring here is satisfaction, and how does the satisfaction match up to the expectation they had before they actually began the process of trying to place a bet. We also have a customer audit where the customer tells us the importance of the different elements as they're moving through the journey. A journey has a number of steps, each step trying to complete a different type of task. The importance of each step may be different to the step that it comes before it or the step that comes after it. And so understanding the importance of the step within the overall journey is really important, and we weight the results on the basis of the importance of the step within the journey. More on that to come. Customer ratings of navigability, look and feel of content are all important here. And then I mentioned that this is our 15th year in operation. We have been developing all these years a best practice audit, and basically internally within Global Reviews, over 500 different data points. We look at your website and we audit it on the basis of, does it have this, does it have that, yes, no, and we mark the website on the basis of the fundamental elements that are required for consumers in order to be able to complete various different tasks on your website. And so we have 4 different data points that feed into this actual overall methodology, the final one being with regards to the provision of relevant content and tools. We take all this data together, we combine it into this concept I've been talking about, the consumer journey, and we divide it into categories and stages. I mentioned already that the scores are weighted on the basis of customer needs, but also on where they actually are within the journey. And then finally, Global Reviews expertise, which is hugely important because we've been doing this worldwide for a number of years. All of the results are compiled together to the final results, which we create this one singular customer experience score. Now, the customer experience score is essentially a dashboard score. It's one score which is made up of all of the other scores that have been measured and throughout the actual research which was being completed on your website. So this customer experience score, we looked at this consider and act phase already. And so within this customer experience score, we have 4 different levels. At the top level is the phase. So where is the consumer with regards to the journey? Underneath the phase, we have the stage. What is the consumer trying to achieve at that particular stage of the journey? For the sports betting program, for the digital sales effectiveness, and for the mobile sales effectiveness, we have 6 stages. Underneath the stage, we have a category, because within each individual stage, there are a number of other elements that are supposed to be supporting the customer to be able to help them complete the task that they're trying to complete. Understanding fees and charges is the example here. And then underneath category, we have subcategory. And so overall, the benchmark consists of up to 4 different types of data inputs, which are all rolled up together to create this one customer experience score. The fundamental element here is that there are over 500 data points which are then put together into 63 different types of scores. It's a massively complex methodology. It enables us to drill right down to the very tactical with regards to what's going on an individual website. And when you're benchmarking websites within an industry against each other, it becomes very powerful because everybody's being measured on the same basis at a very tactical level. Within the sports betting digital sales effectiveness and the mobile sales effectiveness, we have 6 stages. We have the initial engagement, we have introducing options, facilitating decisions, channel selection, placing a bet, and registration. 2 phases make up these 6 stages: the consider and the act. Looking at the industry performance overall with regards to the digital sales effectiveness, we can see who the top performers are for each of these 6 stages that I've just discussed. So we have a line chart here. The 6 stages are along the bottom, and we can see that William Hill is the one that is achieving the highest with regards to initial engagement, followed by Coral, followed by BetFred, SkyBet, Coral again, and then William Hill at the end. Now, what is very interesting here is that already we have looked at the digital marketing effectiveness, and we looked how William Hill has increased the initial preference from 11% up to 26%. We looked at the reasons why William Hill had potentially increased this preference, or we looked at the potential reasons why William Hill had increased this preference. And what we'd established is that the website helped them compare options was one of the standout differences between those who preferred William Hill against the overall sample. So this concept of the initial engagement is when a customer comes to your website. It is the first number of seconds that they actually are seeing everything that is available on your website. They're getting the look and feel, they're getting the proposition, the colors, the brand tones, the values, and the first number of seconds that they're on your website are probably the most important, because for every incremental second that they stay on your website, the stronger the possibility that they're going to remain. So that the digital marketing effectiveness was telling us that those who preferred William Hill at the final preference did so more likely because the website helped them compare options than against the average, is then corroborated by the scores that are coming out of the digital sales effectiveness, that William Hill are scoring the highest on the initial engagement. And so this really is suggesting to us that the website is really important, especially when you wrap this into this concept we have at the very beginning, where 89% are starting at a search engine and then 62% are then actually going straight to a brand website after that. If the brand can deliver on an initial engagement which captures the consumer's intention and facilitates them with regards to the task that they're trying to complete, then this is really the battleground where the brands can win. So that is overall the score with regards to the digital sales effectiveness. Top performers, those who were the bottom performers in the digital sales effectiveness in June 2014. We have Betfair coming in at 48% for initial engagement, and 888.com for introducing options, facilitating decisions, Matchbook for channel selection, and then Betfair and SkyBet coming in towards the end. I would like to focus on one particular area, so let's see if we can find out what's actually driving the scores in each of these areas. So I'm going to talk about placing a bet. Within the overall placing a bet area, we can see the scores here again indexed against the average, how each of the different providers are performing. Now, we have a number of different people on this webinar this morning, so introducing the slider is very important so that different people on this webinar could see how their individual brands were performing. But at the top we have Coral, and at the bottom we have Betfair. If we're looking for the industry average, it's somewhere in between Matchbook and 365. So Betfair, what is driving the score with regards to Betfair and that they're at the bottom, specifically in comparison to Coral, who are at the top? The placing a bet stage is broken down then into 2 categories. We have the betting slip, and then we have the betting slip support. Within betting slip and betting slip support, there is also subcategories. We have behavioral tasks which were completed within this particular stage, where we asked the consumers to go and actually try and place a bet on the website. And that and audit scores are what are making up the scores that you can see on the screen in front of you. And so what we can see then is for the betting slip support, Betfair are particularly underscoring against Coral, but they are underscoring against the whole industry when it comes to the betting slip. So what is it that's driving these scores? Here's an example of some of the results from the actual betting slip behavioral report, and what we can see is Finding where to start to add a bet was not easy is something that's jumping out. I found the betting slip process confusing is jumping out. There was no instruction or help to assist me through the process is jumping out. But specifically going back to this, finding where to start to add a bet was not easy. And looking at some of the verbatims from the people who actually tried to complete the task gives us a little bit more of a picture with regards to what's going on. I couldn't find anything to tell me where it was, let alone how to do it. Too confusing and too complicated. Some of the other elements that came out of this with regards to the consumer audit, the evaluation of adding a bet, Betfair significantly underscoring against the industry average, and then the betting slip function and content, Betfair are also underscoring. An example from a best practice, someone who's doing this well within the area, we can see that William Hill links relevant help in the betting slip. We can see the Sportsbet have extensive in-form help, and then Bet365 and PaddyPower have World Cup specific help. Moving now to the mobile sales effectiveness study, here are the top performers from July 2014. Betfair coming in at the top with regards to initial engagement, PaddyPower scoring high in two areas. But there is a large industry pain that we recognized earlier on, which is in the channel selection area. And in the top performer, we have Boyle Sports with regards to channel selection. Who are the brands that are not performing as well in this area? We can see, interestingly, while William Hill were scoring very well with regards to the initial engagement and the digital sales effectiveness, they are scoring much lower when it comes to the mobile sales effectiveness in initial engagement. BetVictor coming in and introducing options and channel selection, and then Betfair coming in at the last two stages. So channel selection is obviously an area which is jumping out, and I don't actually want to go into channel selection because I would like to focus on another area, but I am going to pull out some of the key highlights for the reasons why channel selection are coming up as an industry pain. The industry in general could do an awful lot more with regards to promoting the mobile channel and helping customers with regards to understanding the reasons why the mobile channel is important or good. So what is it that they can get by going through the mobile channel? What are the advantages of using mobile over web or whether they're going to the store? Can they get their winnings out through the mobile phone? What are the implications with regards to security and privacy? Can they bet immediately when it comes to mobile? Helping the consumer understand what is going on and the differences when they're actually going through their mobile process is really important. And this is some of the stuff that the industry could do an awful lot more with regards to supporting the customer and helping them make the decisions to place these bets through their phones. So what I am going to talk about, though, is the facilitating decisions. So again, looking at the overall scores within facilitating decisions, we can see that Boyle Sports up there at the top. This again is the industry average, indexed against the industry average, and then we have sports betting are down at the bottom. Facilitating decisions. What are the type of categories and subcategories that make up facilitating decisions? Why choose us? At every step along the way, the consumer needs to be reminded why they should choose you. How does the consumer judge the experience with regards to actually moving through trying to complete a bet or learning more about the different provider that they're choosing from, whether it be an accumulator or a single bet or the different type of products that are available? Is it easy to contact the company? What are the contact options that are available to them, and how easy is it actually to start that process of getting in touch? So again, looking at some of the results on screen in front of us, we can really see that Sportbet score poorly in providing means for customers to contact the company through the mobile platform. BetVictor and Boyle Sports score strongly in this regard. And in terms of satisfaction with the experience, BetFred score behind the market. Some examples then. Boyle Sports offer good contact support. Down on the bottom left-hand corner, we can see the live chat, email and phone. And a small point, while it may seem very simple, anecdotal research in the industry shows that an infographic with an image on its own without any kind of lexical backup does not perform as well as an infographic with lexical along with it with regards to helping the consumer get to where they want to get to. So what I'm basically trying to say is if you have an envelope for an email and you also put the word email, you will have a stronger chance that the consumer will be able to get to where they want to get to. And the gold gradient effect tells us that the more a consumer is able to achieve the type of things that they want to achieve, the more likely they are to continue working on your website and to continue getting closer to the goal. The closer they get to the goal, the more they want to complete the goal. Other examples, Ladbrokes contacting the company score remains low due to hard to find contact details and lack of integrated live websites. So this 27% on the horizontal bar chart, I would like to look for an online web chat feature being really important, it not being available in Ladbrokes being a point of frustration. A number of other brands offer callback or live chat. On the left we have SkyBet, we have Bet365 in the middle, and then we have BetVictor. Taking an example from a completely different industry, we have National Australian Bank. Here they provide the opening hours. The opening hours, what's interesting here is that it's on a contextual help basis as well. So the idea being, if I'm a new customer, maybe I'd prefer to talk to sales. If I'm a current customer, maybe I'd talk to someone who is in the accounts department with regards to regular and general accounts. So the idea that the more that the person who's on the website thinks that they're able to get in touch with someone who's relevant to what their actual search is or what their task is, the more likely they are to feel like that they're going to get looked after by you and stay with you and ultimately choose you. Other things with regards to contextual help or help in general and support, having the open hours with regards to when support is available, and even going as far as having an international clock on the website which shows what the time is in the HQ, so that the person actually knows whether there's going to be someone in the office when they're making the call. This is particularly important, obviously, when it comes to international companies working across multiple time zones. So, wrapping it up, what will improve customer digital experience? What are the top 3 recommendations that we would make with regards to this for 2015? So the first one would be increase why choose us, validation at key decision points at nearly every point along the pathway to purchase as the consumer is making a decision. Second one is promote and encourage the online mobile channels. This is something which is really important and was a particular pain point for all customers as they were going through the mobile sales effectiveness. And then incorporate more online support with the bet slip was something which came up as being important too. So this idea being, not only should it make it easier from a signposting point of view for the customer to understand where they're going next, it's really important to let customers know where they currently are, and so that they know that what they have completed up to now, before now, is correct, and they're able to move on to the next step. So this idea of not only letting them know where they need to go, but really where they are right now. My contact details are on screen for anybody who would like to get in touch or who has any questions. My mobile or telephone number is there, and obviously you'll find contact details for other people and myself on our website. And then we have our data calendar for 2015 with regards to different programs that we're running in 2015. You can see that the digital sales effectiveness is running in February and August 2015. Mobile sales effectiveness is running February and August 2015. And then our digital marketing effectiveness, I've alluded to earlier on, is running monthly. Now, we have a number of questions which have come up, so I'm just going to take 2 seconds and I'm going to go offline, and what I'm going to do is just look at those questions, and I'm going to come back in literally 1 minute and answer those questions. So if you'd like to bear with me just for a second, and I'll have a look and see what questions people are asking. Okay, guys, thank you very much. We have 2 questions, and I'll answer the questions, but I'm going to be brief because I have run over a little bit. So the first question is, with clients, do global reviews give examples from outside sports betting? So I alluded to this at the very, very beginning. Yes, absolutely. We look at best practice across multiple industries, and not only industries, but also on a geographical basis as well. So we will take what is working very well in a different industry like telecommunications. We recently completed an international project on digital sales effectiveness across America, the UK, Australia and New Zealand, looking at 16 different brands, and so we can pull best practice out of that and bring it into something like sports betting. So that's the first one. And yes, we can show what best practice looks like. Second one is, do you provide recommendations? Absolutely, yes, we work with all of our clients in a consulting capacity. So many of our clients would work with us when they're looking at doing a website redevelopment. We look at wireframes, we make recommendations based on best practice of making tweaks and changes to the wireframes before potentially the client then decides to put actual consumers through the website in a digital sales effectiveness program. We also work with what the client can control on their site. I suppose is very important because some clients aren't in full control of all of the aspects of their platform. We prioritize recommendations to the client not just on the basis of costs but also on the basis of time, easy wins, and then also we work very closely with clients with regards to what they're trying to achieve over the next work program that they may have for the next 12 months and maybe further along. So I think that covers hopefully all of the questions that people may have had. I'd like to thank you again for coming along this morning, and apologies for running a little bit over. If you have any questions, my contact details are on screen, and thank you very much again.